The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome into the Coach Bill Clark Show, presented by our friends at Dr. Pepper and Buffalo Rock. My name is Landrum Roberts. He is the Coach Bill Clark. Molly Robinson with us as always. Pat Smith, coach, apparently filling out his tournament bracket, getting ready for the big dance, as they say.
Right. It takes time.
It does. Have you filled out your bracket?
Mine is ready.
Is it ready to go?
Yeah.
So are you a quick scan you go through, or are you really thinking about some of these matchups?
Probably a quick scan along with help from my son who's good at it. So, it's but I've been asked multiple times, so I have one this year.
Rick Neuheisel, remember what happened in that infamous bracket that he had where he was? I couldn't remember. Was he at Washington at the time, maybe?
I believe so.
Coaching one of those. Did you have to have the letter that was sent out by the NCAA reminding all of your staff during that time that we can't be filling out brackets for money, I guess?
We would do a compliance meeting every quarter, and they would come in and, they'd have topics, and that always came up. Just don't forget, that this, when we had rules.
Right.
Even if they didn't make a lot of sense, we at least had them.
What's funny is working with the NCAA, and there's a lot of fine people at the NCAA. Sure. They do get a black eye, and parts of it for good reason. But there's some good folks there. And talking with them over the years and working a certain event that I do, they're telling me that, no, it was for the NCAA employees as well, where you could not participate in a bracket, to the point of, if you know that there is a bracket going on and there's a watch party or a neighborhood get-together, don't go to the house. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
And now we are where we are.
Yeah.
As far as the lack of rules.
Correct.
And everything else that's going on. I want to get into spring practice first. Auburn, Alex Golesh, that tenure officially beginning. They hit the practice field earlier this week. Byron Brown, that cast. But Alex Golesh talking about the little things and the attention to detail coming in from your hydration test, everything, that accountability. Reading his comments, and I don't think he was trying to throw shade at a former staff, but it kind of was indirectly about talking. Is this something that's common, uncommon, new for a coaching staff to come in and these certain things be identified immediately?
I still remember following a coach, and I told him, I said, it's going to look like I'm talking about you because we're going to do things different. You ran the ball all the time, we're going to throw it too, or whatever that may be. Just know it's not personal. But people are going to make comparisons. Just, they did this. And the new guy's always the right guy. The new guy's always the better guy. But when your old guy got fired, you're looking for the things that go, wait a second, oh, he's doing this and we didn't do that. So I think some of that's natural. I think any coach that's worth anything is looking for, why didn't they win? Is it players? Is it scheme? Is it attention to detail? And usually it's a lot of those things along with, obviously, players. Maybe they had an injury. Why weren't they successful? And you're always looking at that. I met with a high school staff yesterday, which is always good for me to go back. And usually it's a former player or former coach of mine who brings his new staff in. And it just brings back the attention to detail.
Right.
As we've said, it's that we're going to run a 10-yard dash. We talked about that. Are your feet behind the line? I mean, I give a whole talk on this. I spoke to a hospital group this week, but how do you start behind the line? And then are you running a 10-yard dash or you really running a 15-yard dash? You're really running not a 40-yard dash, but a 50-yard dash. Starting the correct way and finishing, which goes into everything. Hydration tests. Are we holding them accountable or not? And that's why I think seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, even though seat 1 may be a Heisman Trophy winner in football, in team sports, he's got to be felt that he's doing what the rest of them are doing. And that's why, and this is what I was brought up, this is how I coached, you get the toughest guy, the best player, and that's who I'm going to hold accountable.
How much of a leg up is it, not only for the staff, but to have the players, the 13 that followed you from South Florida, what seemed like they're going to be the pieces of that offense, to start the quarterback and Byron Brown, that has been a position that Auburn has hurt for in the last few seasons. How much of that is an advantage for a coaching staff to have the leader of your offense coming in for the guys who have not been exposed to the Alex Golesh way, coaching style, his staff, etc.?
It's everything. He knows the terminology. What do you call a go route? They may call it a, fly or what, just there's so much terminology. That's one thing. Okay, we can teach them that. Then there's the philosophy, high tempo and getting the ball, and now you got the quarterback along with these other guys that get it. They're also there to help coach these other guys on, this is just how coach is and this works. This works for us. This is why we won. This is who he is. This is who the staff is. But when you got the quarterback and he already knows what we're trying to do, it's huge.
In the 4 months of him getting acclimated, and there's been a lot of boxes to check for Alex Golesh and his staff, but take people behind the scenes for the guys maybe that are carryovers from last year's team. Mm-hmm. But this is all new. All of this terminology, it's new, the way of doing things. How much has been learned, would you imagine, by those guys in this 4-month process leading up to on the field time?
Yeah. Oh, there's no telling how much. I mean, you get good at giving so much information. And what's happened now, these guys maybe that weren't as good at it, they've learned because of NIL. Everybody is getting numbers of players. And so it's like me, the program gets shut down and you're not an expert at it, but you say, okay, if we're going to succeed, I better go get recruiting junior college players and national recruiting and bringing these guys here. So you start learning those things that you need to know. Probably the fact that college football is more used to this influx of players they've learned, and the rules have been loosened up. Getting balls out on the field and not worried so much about how much you're meeting. We were talking about the NCAA. I mean, when you start talking about where it used to be, and you had your own people looking, oh, is this guy out on the field that's supposed to be an analyst? And so I think those rules have been loosened up, which is obviously helpful in the fact of I need extra meeting time. I need to get them on the field. I need to do walkthrough. So everybody's got that. Everybody's living in that world a lot more. But him having his own guys, as we talked about a minute ago, is huge.
Going back to something you said, Coach, and it was about putting your stamp on it for Alex Golesh and this staff, even if there were a lot of things that they're implementing that weren't existing in the Hugh Freeze tenure under his leadership. For those things that are being brought about, is it almost a case of, well, you know what, I agree with what they were doing with this or this, but we want to make it look like something totally different just from a mindset, psychological change of what these guys have been through, and that would be a lack of winning? Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, I think just the fact of they did this and we're trying to be different. And I've said this a lot of times when somebody follows a winner, and they're so hard trying to put their stamp on it that they change a uniform and I mean, a little bit of that I get, but we're going to do something different just to show it worked. So my thing would be, all right, you were doing this. We do this already. It's great. Maybe we weren't even doing it exactly like this. We're going to keep it. I mean, I'm a great copier. And then these are the things that you didn't do. Now, your coaches probably told you to do it, and you didn't do it, or they didn't hold you accountable, or you couldn't do it physically, but we're going to do it. And that's why I talk a lot about holding the mirror up to yourself, the study. Remember I told you the story. If you remember, I told you the Bill Arnsparger story. Did I tell that story on the air? I may have told it in one of the last shows. Bill Arnsparger comes into San Diego. They had just gone 3-13. He's with Bobby Ross. The next year they go to the Super Bowl. Bill Arnsparger says this. He says, we watched the film. So he had a guy off the staff. He said, 80% of the time. Now, this is a San Diego Chargers a year before. He's talking about how did they make the Super Bowl before the game. 80% of the time, they lined up incorrectly, okay, or they executed it incorrectly. And I don't mean they missed a tackle or they did not do what they were told to do. They didn't line up like the defense said, or they were supposed to step into a gap. That's the pros. He said, what did you do? We got them lined up. We executed what was called. Same, because that was prior to a lot of free agency. I remember, and it was son, I was giving that talk. I was talking to a group of high school coaches. Son was there. He's a high school coach. He said, Coach, that's exactly right. That's what he said. And it just getting guys to execute the call. Now there's the effort and all those other things that go into that, but the minute details. And that's why when I say this, behind the line and running through the line, that permeates everything we do. And so as I, and I heard today, I had a high school coach today to tell me he was at this school. And it's not a Southeastern Conference school, but it was a school that's got tons of talent. And he was just talking about how the head coach is not coaching them hard. And there's that what's hard and what's not hard enough. But in this day of all this money,
if the player's recognizing that he's not being coached hard, that's a problem.
Yes. And so this guy had heard it from some of the players. Then he went to practice and was just amazed. He was shocked. Now, they got a lot of money and they got a lot of good players. It was almost like the coach was scared to coach them hard. And I'm like, today when we're paying all this money.
How are you handling that these days? Because you get the prima donna.
Yep.
Or maybe he's not a prima donna, but he's still making a lot of money.
Yep.
And all of a sudden he wants to start making demands and starts going and breaking some of those non-negotiables that you've instilled in your, like showing up on time.
Yeah, I think that's the question for a coach who says, I'm willing to sacrifice anything. And if you don't have a line as a human being or as a coach that says, I'm not going past this, now I'm going to work with you. You're not always going to have a perfect day. We're going to communicate. But there's a line there, like showing up on time. And that's why when we say we've got some simple rules, and rule number one is to be early and prepared. You're not going to run out on the field with your helmet off. So your helmet's buttoned up when you run on the field. You're at class, you've got your work to work on. You show up early for meetings. Those things permeate everything we do. And then I think it's that same thing of I'm tough on everybody. I'm coaching everybody. I'm coaching everybody hard because that's what your job is to do. I'm holding everybody accountable. Does that mean you're screaming? No, they know everybody's got accountability. I'm coaching everybody the same way versus this guy's getting paid a lot of money. This guy was a 5-star. I mean, where does it end?
And where does it go from doing what I know is right, what's made me successful as a head coach, as a leader of young men, to now I'm answering to a collective?
Exactly. Well, that's where you got to know enough to know this is non-negotiable. This contract's got to reflect these beliefs that he's still going to follow team rules. And if that stops, then the money stops. And if I can't get that agreed upon, money's money. If we're at the right place, we got the same amount of money basically as these other guys. It's just how we spend it. And you're coming here, this is what goes with that. Because it's real simple. We won't win and I won't be here.
Right.
And this money won't last for you. But whether it will or not, we're not doing that. And I think that's where people that understand what it takes to win, they understand the confidence that you need as a coach. And you just got in your mind, you got to go, I'd rather be fired. I'd rather you fire me for doing what I believe in and what's right than giving in. And I'm not talking about to the point of insanity. We're not talking about that you can't deal with your kids and you don't have a relationship with them and you treat them like family and all these other things. But the basic rules, which would be the same rules you'd have for your children because you care about them. And kids see that and they understand that and they know. And that's why they go, wait a second, this guy wins here, here, here. How do people win at these multiple places? Because they got standards. They got things they know are right, and then they uphold those standards.
Through all of your coaching experience as a head coach, whether it's leading state championship program at Prattville, what you were able to do at Jacksonville State, UAB, did you ever have the most pivotal point of your season where everything's on the line and you had a player that did something boneheaded?
Yeah, it's a great question.
How did you handle it? And then we can maybe draw some parallels.
Yeah, this is a good high school story. Here. So I get to Prattville. Literally, I get that job in June and had seen Prattville from afar. One school community, knew they didn't have tons of money. It was a county school, but had history of good players. And you had this big town that had one school, which I loved. Like I was brought up with Ohatchee and Piedmont. And so I get there, and I'd found out the year before, not only had they not had any players, but they were letting guys miss practice and still play. Yeah. So not only had they lost all these players, and I showed up the first meet, there's 22 kids, and I always laugh and say 4 of them were kickers and freshmen, So I had to go find these kids, and I said, there's one rule here. One rule. Not only do you, if you miss practice unexcused, do you not play, you're off the team. We win the first game. We go lose to a really good Opelika team. I think we win the second. We lose a heartbreaker in game 4, and we're 2-2. And we had lost a couple guys in the summer academically. I'd gotten a lot academically eligible. A couple of them didn't make it who were on the offensive side of the ball. And we were really built around the quarterback and the running back. Practice was getting ready to start. There's neither one there. I've already gone to get their equipment. And I don't know if we win another game.
Right.
I have an assistant principal pulls up in the golf cart and says, Coach, I think these guys were loitering around the outside and needed to come to practice.
Ooh.
They were in the parking lot, she said. I said, get your butt in there. You owe me after practice for being late. They go put their stuff on. We end up winning 7 that year. Got tied in the area and didn't make the playoffs next year, 9-1, and so on. That principal, what she did probably saved us. I don't know what would they have showed up, would they have not showed up, but I had already gone to get their equipment because I had made it such a big deal.
What does your after practice awards look like? I know what ours looked like in high school. They were not fun. It was after team conditioning. And it was usually the hottest day in full pads or Tuesday practice. Yeah. And then that's when the fun began. Yeah. If you were one of those lucky players.
Lord, we've done it all. Rolled, and we tried to do things that were productive, tackle the sled, catch more balls, but it was, there was academics and behavior, and we didn't have a bunch of behavior, but just things that just reminders. Right. This is what, and you don't want it to be something horrible, and that's why a lot of times we rolled because it was not on their legs. Yeah. But once again, we're all accountable. There's rules. We follow the rules, and that was the thing as a player. You'd look back and go, "Glad I'm trying to act right here, and I'm gonna mess up some." Sure. But there's accountability. And you saw the best and the worst, and everybody was out there doing it. That is comforting as a player, that my coaches hold everybody accountable and have a standard, and because they know that's what it takes.
Alabama basketball coach Nate Oates, he's getting a lot of blowback after the recent incident and the arrest of one of his better players, Aiden Holloway, on the marijuana charge. Is that fair, unfair that he's getting that criticism? Because I know you, we know you as a man, number one, as a coach, but also know that you can't make decisions for 85, 13 in basketball's case, kids in their own time. But that still doesn't totally excuse you from not having an eye or an ear out for what's going on. Yeah. It's a tough spot. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, the hardest ones are that they do go home to their self. They're not going to a dorm.
Right.
It was totally different when they came and could do a dorm check. Everybody was there. We go into their rooms. They went in our room. That was a totally different deal than when you go get in an apartment. I can
imagine these are pretty nice apartments these days.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's just a different world. Now, I was there when we first started dealing with all the, testing for marijuana. And, and that was when across the board it was, one, we need to get help. We need to get help for these guys. And that's where we still created penalties that just were what they were. But it started with getting help. Now, what you've got to do as a coach, though, when something gets to the legal issue, you got to have a standard answer. And I love this kid. He's a great kid. He's never missed a practice. He showed up on time, I'm assuming, right? He's never said a bad word to anybody. All I've ever seen is good. But this is a legal matter, and it's got to work its course, And now, the volume of what maybe this guy had, and so, but I had that many times with something like that we had to let play out, and a lot of times it was nothing, But when it gets to the legal matter, it's just got to play out. So I think you got to support your kids, support your player, you love him. But obviously there's a mistake been made, and when it gets to the legal part, that's got to be played out. And I'm not really even going to put a time frame on that.
Right.
I think that's what I saw that was the question, But was it his? Was it So you got to let the process play out, and that's the best way to answer that, because you still love this kid, So you want him to know you do,
sure,
and care about him. But we also have a legal system. And we're in a college that's, training young kids and all the things. So I think the biggest thing is there. I'm supporting my kid, but the legal system's got to play out and then not put a timetable on it. Like, if we can beat this thing, right? That's just not a good. That's just not.
We get one of those good lawyers. Who knows?
Right.
Anything can happen.
That's just not good optics,
right?
And you got to think about those things.
Not a smart decision by that young man. What is a smart decision though is our friends at Smart Bank.
Yeah, and I think once again we talk about this every show is surround yourself with good people. Just like you guys, you put good people around you who help you, and the guys at Smart Bank truly are good people. They're smart. They do a really good job with your money, and they're going to know who you are when you come in there.
All right, Coach, as you've learned, Pat Smith, myself, we're big uniform geeks here on the show.
Yeah.
But what we learned about you early on is you've got an eye for the uniform. You know that you got to look good if you're going to play good, or at least if you're going to play good, you might as well look good. Right. Kirby Smart, who you know very, very well, he was asked by a group of reporters about an all-white uniform potentially, and he said, look, you triple the subscriptions to the collective by this certain time.
Right.
I'll wear But he also went on to say that he didn't care. Really, he was more focused on the players, how they play, than what they look like. That's what got my antennas up because I'm thinking there is no way that you don't really care that much about what your team wears. Educate us.
Yeah, that's not true. He got my equipment guy who is great at their gear, and that's important. And he knows that. That's not what I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he is saying that the combination of uniforms is not what, and you don't want to get in that conversation if you don't want to.
Right.
He don't want to because there's tradition.
Sure.
And that's what, he played there. He may love what they do and feels like, all right, we got plenty of combinations. Oh, we go all black. Now here comes all white. Myself, on the other hand, and I've told that story so many times, I love the different combinations. I love the different uniforms and anything that created hype that made us better, unless we were the standard of college football. Maybe in Alabama, Penn State, there's a few of those that when you leave that, you're losing your iconic stature. And I could maybe see that. But for me, I love the whole Oregon idea. I loved all the different things because the kids loved it.
Yeah.
And the kids loved it, which, my whole thing, if they play better, if our fans are better, and I'm sure in his mind's like, hey, we got plenty of fans and they're going to show up crazy and they're going to do, maybe he doesn't feel that way. So everybody's got their own opinions. I think probably his might be steeped in tradition a little bit more. And probably just don't want to deal with it. And here's a chance to get a little more money in my collection.
He could throw out, hey, a former assistant of mine, Dan Lanning in Oregon, they have thousands of uniform combinations. How many championships? We got two. How many championships do they have, right?
So it's just, if that's something, I don't need one more headache, or people that he deals with thinks we need to stay traditional. And that's what he wants to believe in. Then that's the thought. So there's a thought there. It's not about looking good. It's about not necessarily wanting to fool with that, maybe because his thought of this is who we are and this is what we're known for.
I want things to look good if I'm building them or if I'm paying someone to build them for me.
Correct.
Our friends at Webb Concrete,
Absolutely.
They got everything you need under the sun from build up to topping out.
That's it. All things, and used to they were concrete and the best in the business, and now they do it all commercial, just regular home builders. They got it all, flooring, all the things to build your house. Webb.
16 penny sinkers. I can get them there.
There you go.
Can I get a 22-ounce E-swing hammer?
Absolutely.
Safety glasses.
100%.
Okay. Because we want to be safe.
Absolutely.
And you know all about being safe. You've been busy with a Coach Safe.
We have. We spoke last week about going to Louisiana. We talked to Governor Braun from Indiana. I think we'll get the law in Louisiana. Indiana, I think, about a year away. We're starting to get other states partnered up with Georgia. A lot of great things going on with Coach Safely. One thing, I was speaking to a group the other day, and I said, who knows Coach Safely? And I only got about half the hand. So I got to do a better job. We got to market it. We got the app coming, new course, new app, and then the next step will be working on some AI where you can actually ask a question to a coach, to Dr. Andrews. So it's going to be some cool stuff.
Matt Leinart, former USC quarterback. Now, this was taken from apparently something that he said on a podcast, but it was posed to him, or USC wanting to unretire his jersey number that's been retired, give it to an incoming player to add a bell, another whistle. Reportedly, he said, absolutely not. Where are you on this, Coach?
Yeah, and I got, I saw Molly and I were talking about, I think I saw, he said that, I stand by what I said before in the past, which sounds like that's what he said. I could see the point of, here's another selfish kid coming in here that's not going to stay. If it was somebody really special that he got a relationship with, and that's how I would do it if I was a coach. Hey, come in here and meet John Smith, this great quarterback, Matt, and see if you're willing, based on your conversation to him, to give him an opportunity to wear your jersey this year. He's that special. That's how I would have played it as the head coach. And if not, I probably feel the same way he does, especially in this world.
Was there ever a player in high school that you coached that you said, you know what, we probably ought to think about retiring the jersey?
We never had that situation. I think maybe we could have came back if I'd have stayed in a spot long enough, like Prattville, where you could have came back. But, I don't know that we had some good players. I don't know if we had anybody that iconic. And I know there are some of those guys. Even though we had some great players, my guys, like Roman Harper. Roman was a really good high school player, but who got better and better and better and better. And then I wasn't there. I had already gone. So, but no, there's, those guys that are like that have earned it. And I could see that mindset if he wasn't bought into that player personally.
Some programs, they don't retire jerseys. Alabama, they don't retire jerseys. Auburn just has a few, and that's designated for your Heisman Trophy winners and people who've done great things for the most part. But then there's some programs that, look, if you could foresee this, don't hand them out like candy like the New York Yankees do. And I bust on the Yankees all the time. I know that's a proud franchise, but you're running out of numbers.
Correct.
Quit giving away so many of these numbers. But I would also, if I'm Matt Leinart, go, you know what? I stuck it out. First of all, I was behind Carson Palmer. Yeah. I didn't leave school. I played 4 years, earned my stripes, felt like I earned enough where you're giving me recognition, retiring my jersey, but you want to come to me and unretire it for some kid that you're probably paying $1 million+ to that has never done one thing on this campus or for this football program. I would have a problem with it.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. And I see being the coach, and, this is very important because the numbers are very important to kids. But I could see him being just like he is.
Coach, we got the tournament coming up. You filled out your bracket.
Yep.
You said it's a winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have who winning it all?
I got Duke.
You got Duke.
Yeah.
That's usually
I know.
Well, at least they'll be in the Final Four.
Yeah.
They usually are.
Yeah.
Cutting down the nutsack.
That's why I picked them.
It can be really, really tough. Donahue Chevrolet, right there in Fort Payne, Alabama. You can go to DonahueChevrolet.com and find all the ridiculous deals that they have going on right now.
Very ridiculous. Yeah. Our friends at Donahue, great job. Great products, Chevy products. Always got great specials going on. Check them out.
And our friend Jimmy Lee, Dr. Pepper, Buffalo Rock. I enjoy their products every single day. I know you do as well.
Don't get any better than our friends at Buffalo Rock.
All right. Well, good luck in your tournament. We'll keep tabs on it here on the show.
Yes.
All right.
We'll see what happens.
For the coach, Bill Clark, Molly Robinson, I'm Landrum Roberts. Thanks for joining us on the Coach Bill Clark Show.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by